Brown family lived on West Road in Rye during the 1800s. Moses and his wife Henrietta raised a family and were surrounded by relatives. Moses was a successful farmer and active community member. He kept a diary from 1863 until 1918, recording the weather, the business of the farm, family news, and town, state, and national events. Although the journal entries are short, the reader can get a sense of what life was like for working people in Rye during this time period.
Farming and growing crops is how Moses Brown made a living. He grew crops and raised animals on his farm. Some of the crops he grew were potatoes that sold for $2 per bushel. New potatoes are sold at $3 to $4 per bushel. He also grew fruits like blackberries. He sold his cow for $70. Overall, John Brown's farm was very important to him and affected his life financially.
In the 1800s, Rye's transportation included walking, horse-pulled vehicles, trains, and boat. The roads were unpaved and they traveled by walking, horseback carriages, and wagons. In the winter, transportation was not as simple. The snow had to be packed down so that they were able to sled or use a sleigh. Registering your cars would pay for money and road maintenance and keeping transportation safe and pleasurable.
Moses Brown mentions a killing in Kennebunk involving 2 freight trains doing a great amount of damage. The quote says, "Accident on the railroad last night. Near Kennebunk, 2 freight trains meet, killing 3 persons and doing a great amount of damage."
In Moses Brown's journal on Tuesday, November 8, 1864, he stated that Abraham Lincoln was elected president. He concluded that he would undoubtedly be elected once again on June 7th. The vice president was Andrew Johnson. In Moses Brown's journal, he said that on April 14, 1864, in Washington, D.C., he was assassinated in a theater by a man named Booth. He died at 7 a.m. in a hospital the next morning, April 15, 1864. The nation mourned his loss for a while, since he was a very well-known man at the time. On April 17th, he quoted, "A nation weeps. Our president is dead. Close his eyes. His work is done. Pen fails, tongues falter, hearts are dumb." In this quote, I think he meant that the nation was blind to his assassination and didn't expect it. On April 16th, he confirms the name Wilkes Booth, who was surrounded and killed in a barn near Fredericksburg, Virginia, and he was the assassinator of Abraham Lincoln.
From Brown's journal, I have found 3 houses burned within the same month, and 2 within a day of each other. On Thursday, January 11th, a large public house called Seaside, near the Ocean House, was burned that morning at around 2 p.m. On Tuesday, January 30th, a house belonging to Joseph Lear Dennis was burned that night at around 8 p.m. On Wednesday, January 31st, a dwelling house belonging to Augustus G. Rand was burned that night. Now we have sprinklers, smoke detectors, and some questions I have were, what were the causes of these fires, and were the second 2 fires because of the same cause, because they occurred in the same night.
Through October 8th to October 10th, 1871, Chicago endured a horrible fire, causing up to 300 people dead, destroying roughly 3.3 square miles of Chicago, Illinois, and leaving more than 100,000 residents homeless. The fire was caused by an oil lantern being knocked over in a barn, and in the blink of an eye, the whole city of Chicago was up in flames. Moses Brown would have read about the Chicago fire in the newspaper. He said on Monday, October 9th, "Terrible fire in Chicago, Illinois, destroying 1,600,000 bushels of grain, and about half the city." Being a farmer, we can see that he was concerned with the harvest and the plants that were harmed in the fire, as well as the city.
The World Peace Jubilee in Boston was to celebrate the ending of the Franco-Prussian War, which had ended the year before. The Temperate Coliseum was built and backed by Boston, Massachusetts, as a place to have the Jubilee. Moses Brown had most likely seen this in the newspaper, considering he wasn't living in Boston. The Fisk University Jubilee Singers also gave a concert, which was the first time African American singers were included in a big musical production in the country. Even though the festival was a good idea, it suffered financially, partially from the lower than expected attendance and partially from setbacks during the construction of the Coliseum.
Moses Brown writes a lot about the Civil War in 1864 because it is a powerful topic for him. He feels sympathy for the soldiers who risked their lives fighting and died. They died without knowing how much they impacted us and without saying goodbye to their families.
More than 1,500,000 men have during this short period entered the Union armies and navies, left their useful vocations, and any of them surrendering ease, comfort, and the endearments of home for the battlefield. Alas, how many have fallen, how many visions of hope, of joyous greetings, floated in their vivid imaginations, never to be realized. He also adds, we are living in an eventful period. Events for history are daily occurring in convergence of a great rebellion, which has existed, survived the ordeal through 3 long years of carnage.
Even though the war didn't have a direct impact on his life, he still found it as a powerful subject and enjoyed keeping up with it.
There were a lot of ways of entertainment back when Moses Brown was alive. One of the ways of entertainment is to take long journeys away from home sometimes. Croquet is also a very popular activity to play with your friends. There are also concerts and circuses that are good pageants. Family gatherings are also popular and very common during the holidays. Sleighing is another good way of leisure and travel. There are a lot of other ways of entertainment, but these are just to name a few.